Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about all the chems in Fallout New Vegas, and I'm going to be ranking them. This is only things that are considered chems, and not things that are considered drinks, and I'm not going to be referring to them as anything else. This is the chem tier list as far as YouTube is concerned, since they didn't seem to like me saying bladed weapons in one of my videos. Now one got age restricted for some odd reason. I imagine if I take that out and don't change anything about the video and just the title, it will go back to being monetized. Maybe I'll try that in a little bit. So if you see another Fallout tier list showing up sometime soon, that's probably the reason why. Anyway, let's talk about the various chems that we have in Fallout. And this is just straight from the wiki, going straight down the list. So if some of these are kind of in a weird order, that's the reason why. First up, one of our three blobs that we have here. This is the Ant Queen Pheromones. Pheromones give you +3 Charisma, -3 Intelligence, and -3 Perception. That's not necessarily bad. +3 Charisma will get you more speech and more barter, so if you need to pass a speech or a barter check, you can do that. +3 Charisma is a pretty big bonus to whatever Charisma check you're going for, or any of those checks, as well as you can stack this with other buffs, and it's very easy to just keep stacking Charisma, so this actually isn't a terrible one for you just to carry around with you. It does weigh 1, it is actually worth a decent amount of money though too, so you can sell these, but overall these are actually fairly fine to be carrying around a couple of them, just in case you need them for that extra Charisma check. It's not going to really help you if you need a Science, Repair, what other skills are associated with this, Medicine, Lockpicking, Explosives, or Energy Weapon check. I don't think there is any Energy Weapon check, but there is checks for all the other ones, so it's not going to help with those, but hey, it could help you a little bit. And I'm going to put this one up in a B tier. I think that it is okay enough. Then we have Anti-Venom. Anti-Venom is super simple. It just makes it so you get rid of whatever poison is afflicting you. That can be super useful. There's a lot of things that can poison you in this game, and this is the best way just to get rid of it, as well as you could make Anti-Venom. So I'm going to say Anti-Venom is a solid A tier. It's really good to carry around some of these. They also don't weigh anything, so there's no downside to carrying them. Even on the hardcore difficulty, there's no downside. Then we have Ant Nectar. Ant Nectar gives you +4 Strength for 240 seconds, but -2 Charisma and -2 Intelligence. +4 Strength can be good. That means you can carry around even more stuff. That's an extra 40 weight that you can carry around, which is really good. And it's not bad if you get these early on and you want to use it with a melee build, which scales off of Strength. So again, this actually isn't a terrible one for you to be carrying around. I'm also going to put it in a B tier with the other blob that we have there. And then we have our auto-inject stim packs. This one makes it so once you hit 50% health, the stim pack will trigger and it will heal you. This does weigh some amount since regular stim packs don't, so that's the only real downside to this. But other than that, it is pretty good to be carrying around these. These are found in the Lonesome Road. Sometimes the marked men have these, and they will use them. But I would say this is A tier. This is really good. Then we have the auto-inject super stim pack, which gets you even more health, but it triggers once you hit 25% health rather than 50% health. And this will heal you a huge amount of health, but it does give you the Super Stim Pack Sickness, which makes it so you get -1 Strength and Agility for a bit. -1 Strength and Agility can be rough, especially since you're in the middle of a fight, and those are generally combat-related skills, so that can be kind of rough, but just like the regular Stim Pack, these are really useful, and these are worth a ton of money if you just want to stack them up and sell them later. Same with the regular stim packs. That's a lot of the time what I'm using stim packs for. Then we've got the Blood Shield. This is an Honest Hearts. You can make this. This will give you 4 healing for 6 seconds, or 4 hit points for each second for those 6 seconds. So it gives you a little bit of healing bonus, as well as it gives you +50 poison resist. That can be kind of useful against different enemies. Certain enemies do use venoms on their weapons, usually in Honest Hearts. Outside of that, some of the other enemies like Rad Scorpions and Cazadors are dangerous for that. So if you do see them in the distance, you can pop one of these. These aren't something that I'm usually going to be carrying around, but they're not terrible to have either. They're just a bonus, so I'm going to put it C tier. I think it's fine. Then our next item is Buff Out. Buff Out is a chem that we can find around the Wasteland. Gotta make sure I'm using the word chem in this video. And this gives you 3 endurance, 60 HP, and it also gives you 2 strength. That 60 HP is max HP, by the way. So you get it immediately upon taking this, even on the hardcore difficulty, which is awesome. It can actually be really useful early on. And having extra strength and extra endurance is great for a fight. This makes it so you can tank through some more hits, as well as you can carry some more stuff. And if you're using a melee build, you can get potentially some more damage, assuming you're not already maxed out on strength. So the buff out bonus is pretty great. Getting buff out withdrawal is bad, and that's kind of a problem with all of these types of chems. I'm not usually prioritizing my buff out though. Usually it's just something nice to throw into your inventory. So I'm going to put this one B tier. I think it's fine. I usually sell these too because they're worth a lot. A lot of the chems are worth a lot and most of them don't weigh anything. Then our next one is Cat Eye. Cat Eye is an interesting one. This one also doesn't weigh anything, and when you take it, you get the low light vision. So that kind of works like the night vision scope on the weapons, or it works like certain helmets like the hazmat helmet and the riot gear helmet, which is kind of nice. Once you have those, there's no reason to take Cat Eye, and if you're going with a certain perk, Friend of Night, there's also no reason to take Cat Eye. But that being said, you're probably not going to take Friend of Night because it's pretty awful, especially since Cat Eye does the job for you. Cat Eye's not super common though, so it's not an amazing chem by any means. So I'm going to put this one into D tier, but it's still nice to have, at least into the early game. But after a little while, you're probably just going to sell these. Then we have the Coyote Tobacco Chew. This one you can just find all around the wasteland. It's very common to find plants that give you this. This one gives you +1 perception, +1 agility, and it also makes it so you have less sleep deprivation, at least if you're on the hardcore mode. If you're not on the hardcore mode, then that doesn't apply. But hey, +1 perception, +1 agility is pretty nice. You can potentially pass some skill checks that way, whether it be with explosives or lockpicking, I guess with sneaking or something. So this isn't bad. You can get an addiction from this, but it's pretty low, so it doesn't happen too often. This one's not a major buff, but it's fine. I'd put this one C tier. Then we have some of the stuff from Honest Hearts. This is the Duatar Anti-Venom. This is the same as regular Anti-Venom in every single aspect, so I'm just going to put it up there with the Anti-Venom because it's just different by name, and you can craft it a little bit differently, so you can use other materials for it, which is nice. Then we have the Duatar Hide. This one gives you +1 damage threshold for 60 seconds, and no other upside or downside to that. You also can't be addicted to this one. This one's kind of nice. Nice little bonus for tanking through a little bit more damage. Nothing crazy, but I'd put it B tier. It's kind of nice, especially if you're running like a light armor build, or I guess if you just want to stack up the most amount of armor, you're going to throw this on too, just for that +1 bonus. Dixon's Jet is kind of a unique version of Jet. You can only buy it from Dixon. Same with his whiskey. Dixon is the chem vendor, I'm going to say that, instead of what he actually is, in Freeside, where he's usually selling you kind of crappy products, if you know what I mean. So this gives you +10 action points for 240 seconds. That's pretty good for an action point build. However, this gets you a higher chance of being addicted to it, and it does come with some downsides of -1 agility and -1 charisma. I think at least once you're addicted to it, which is very likely. This one kind of sucks, and there's no real reason to use it unless you're just trying to stack up the most amount of action points, so I'd put this one D tier. Then we have the Doctor's Bags. Doctor's Bags make it so you can heal all of your crippled limbs at the same time, or if you're on the hardcore difficulty, it's the only way that you can fix crippled limbs unless you talk to a doctor, making Doctor Bags highly sought after. You can actually craft Doctor's Bags, which is pretty great, so I'm going to put the Doctor's Bag up into S tier. I think it's one of the best items in the game, especially if you're playing on hardcore. Maybe if you're not playing on hardcore, it would go down a little bit because you can just use stim packs to heal up your broken limbs, and you get tons of stim packs in this game anyway. You're probably not going to be running out. If you are, then you're probably not making good use of the food that you're finding. Up next, we have the Fiery Purgative. I hope I'm saying that one right. I don't think I am, but this one's also from the Lonesome Road, and this one also cures poison, just like the Anti-Venoms, but this one does come with a side effect of you getting some rads and you losing 1 endurance. That can be a little bit rough. This only lasts for a little bit of time, though, so it's not as bad of a downside. But if you can make your own anti-venom, or if you can get the Honest Hearts version of it, that is just better. So I'd say that this one is C tier. It's fine. Oh, then we have another blob here. This is the Fire Ant Nectar. This one gives you +25 fire resist and gives you +4 agility for 120 seconds at the cost of -3 intelligence. +4 agility is really good for a VATS build because that dictates how many action points you have. It's also really good if you have low agility, because this also affects your reload speed. Fire resist is kind of nice. It depends on which enemies you're fighting. Usually this is just going to be fire geckos and fire ants, and that's about it. Those are like the two ones that mostly use fire. You could run into some raiders or something using flamethrowers, or a couple other enemies maybe using heavy incinerators or something like that, but it's not going to be super common. Mostly you're going to be using this for the extra agility that you get, and the extra agility can be useful in combat, so once again, I'm going to put this one up into B tier. This one's pretty decent. Next up, we got Fixer. Fixer makes it so you temporarily remove all negatives from withdrawal addiction, or I guess addiction in general. This only goes for 2 minutes, so it doesn't last very long. This isn't as good as just getting your addiction fixed by a doctor, but if you are addicted to stuff in the middle of a combat and you can't get to a doctor quickly, this will get you out in a pinch. So this one I'm going to say is like C tier. It's not really one of the best chems, but it's okay. Then we have Ghost Sight. This gives you ghost vision for 150 seconds. This is basically the same as Cat Eye, just this one you can make a little bit easier. So I'm still going to say this one's like D tier. It's basically the same, it's just the dead money version of it. Then we've got the Healing Poultice, or Potice, or however you're supposed to say this. I'm not entirely sure. This is also in the Honest Hearts DLC. This can fix your limbs, which is super, super useful, especially on the hardcore difficulty. And it also gets you some extra healing. 5 healing over the course of 18 seconds, or 5 healing for 18 seconds, at the cost of -1 agility for 18 seconds. That's not so bad. Losing 1 agility doesn't really matter, and fixing your broken limbs is super, super useful. So I'm going to put this one up into A tier, at least if you're playing on hardcore. Again, if you're playing on the regular difficulty, it's probably less. It'll probably be your C tier, because your stim packs will kind of do the job. Then we've got Healing Powder. Healing Powder gives you +2 HP for 18 seconds, but at the cost of -2 perception. -2 perception doesn't really matter in terms of combat, because perception only gives you the amount of distance that you can see enemies, and that's it for combat purposes. Outside of that, it will kind of suck if you're trying to pick locks or something, but you can wait the 18 seconds and you'll be fine. So Healing Powder is decent for healing. It's nothing incredible, so I'm going to put it B tier, but it's okay. Hydra is probably one of the best chems in Fallout New Vegas if you're playing on the hardcore difficulty, because Hydra can restore all of your limbs over the course of 40 seconds, and this just gives you more limb health, and it works for all of your limbs that might be crippled or injured. The downside to this is that you can get addicted to it, and this does give you -3 endurance, which is pretty bad when you're playing on hardcore, because you want all that HP that you can get and all the resistances you can get. On hardcore, I would say Hydra is probably S tier, because I always want to have more Hydra, because breaking your limbs really sucks on that. If you're not playing on hardcore, then this one's quite a bit less. This one's probably like C or D tier, because the stim packs work just fine for fixing up your limbs. Jet's a classic Fallout chem. This gives you +15 action points for 240 seconds. The main problem is that you can get addicted to this. It's not as addictive as Dixon's Jet, but it's still fairly addictive, so you don't want to be using this too often. But again, for an action point build, it's pretty decent. I would say that this is like B tier. Then we've got Medics. Medics gives you 25% damage resist for 240 seconds. Downside is that you can get addicted to it, but it's not super common to get addicted to this. And if you do get addicted to this, it's -1 agility and -1 intelligence. That can be kind of rough, but hey, plus 25% damage resist is super useful, especially against enemies that have fast-firing weapons that don't necessarily do a whole ton of damage per hit. Something like the minigun, something like submachine guns, potentially shotguns as well. This will kind of help with that. It's not going to help against enemies that are using like 50 cals or brush guns or something. It will still help some, so it's good to stack this on top of your armor and your damage resist and everything that you got, your damage threshold. So I'm still going to say this one's S tier, just because it is super handy for those situations where something big and scary is coming to hit you, and you need to have some sort of damage mitigation for that. Up next, this looks like the doctor's bag, but this one's actually the medical supplies, which you mostly use for a quest. It works the same as a doctor's bag, but this one weighs 10. So it's really bad compared to a doctor's bag, and you don't want to be using it as actual medical supplies. You want to finish up the quest for it. So I'm going to say this one's D tier, because otherwise you're just going to end up having to turn in your medical bags anyway. Alright, up next we have Mentats. Mentats are actually fantastic for chems too. You always want to be seeing these, and you get a lot of them, especially in Old World Blues. Mobius has stacked up tons of these. You get +2 intelligence, +2 perception, and +1 charisma from taking these. The only downside is that there is a small chance that you might get addicted to them, which is not really the best. That gives you -1 intelligence, -1 perception. That's still okay. These are always something that you want to have on hand just to get into various skill checks, because this works for breaking into computers, this works for various speech checks, this works for lockpicking. So Mentats are always good to have. I would say that they're like S tier. And then we have Party Time Mentats, which are also really good. This gives you +2 intelligence, +2 perception, and +5 charisma. So this one's even better than the regular Mentats. Main downside to this one, though, is that they do have a higher addiction chance at 20% rather than 5% like the regular Mentats. That being said, I would still say they're S tier. They are fantastic for getting through speech checks and barter checks, as well as just all the other checks that I just listed before with the regular Mentats. They're really good. Then we have Psycho. Psycho gives you 25% more damage for 240 seconds. This is fairly addictive at 20%, but hey, 25% more damage with everything is pretty strong. And there is a reason why a lot of people consider like a chems build to be one of the strongest builds in Fallout, and it certainly can be, especially once you stack chemist plus chem resist on top of these. yeah, you can get a lot out of them. Or if you want to take Logan's Loophole and you don't plan on getting all the way up to level 50, or you want to re-roll it anyway at Old World Blues, this is really strong and it makes the early game really easy. And Psycho is a pretty good reason as to why it makes it easy. And then we have Radix. Radix is another really good chem that you're probably always going to have on your person. This just makes it so you get plus 25 radiation resist for 240 seconds. There's no downside to it, so this is an easy S tier. It's something that you always want to have on you. Although in Fallout New Vegas, you get a ton of this for some reason. I remember in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, you don't get nearly as much Radix, and at least in 4 it does have a downside. In this one, you get a ton of it, and it has no downside. So at the very worst, it's just going to be extra money that you can sell to somebody. Then we have Radaway, another really good chem. This makes it so it reduces your radiation over time, at least if you're on hardcore. Actually, it works that same way if you're playing regular. It's just on hardcore, it takes even longer. So that's pretty good. Radaway is going to be S tier 2. There's plenty of places where you're going to get some level of radiation, or if you're just eating a bunch of different foods, you're probably going to get some sort of radiation from that. So having Radaway to take it down is awesome. Plus you get tons of Radaway anyway. Rebound's kind of a weird one. This one gives you plus 5 action point regeneration for 60 seconds. So you regen your action points quicker. That can be pretty decent for a VATS build. I don't think it's as useful as just getting more action points like with Jet, because a lot of the time you're not going to be taking back-to-back-to-back fights with your VATS build. There are some locations where that might be the case, but a lot of the time it's usually I'm going to use up all my action points, get a lot of damage onto stuff, and then kind of either regroup or just pick off whatever's left, because I've probably either already killed everything or nearly killed everything, and I don't find this to be super useful, so I'm going to say it's like C tier. I'll still grab a bunch of it because it's worth a decent amount of money, but that's about it. It also has jet addiction to it, which I guess kind of makes sense. And then we've got Rocket. Rocket is a form of jet that you can make, but it's even more potent than jet. It also has the same addiction rate as jet, which actually makes it better. This is plus 30 action points for 60 seconds. That's really good for a VATS build, and you can stack it with all of your other VATS bonuses, so I'm going to say that this is A tier. I think it's pretty good. Then we have Rushing Water. This is from the Lonesome Road DLC. You just need to have that DLC, and then you can make this. And this is probably one of the strongest chems in the game. This functions like regular water, so it actually reduces your hydration, which is great, assuming you're playing on the hardcore difficulty. If you're not, then that won't matter. But this gives you plus 50% attack speed with all melee and unarmed, which is really, really strong, especially with certain weapons that already have really high attack speed anyway. It's really strong with weapons that don't have high attack speed. It also does get you a little bit of health, the same thing that purified water does, and you can just make these. They are really strong. They don't have any addiction rate to them. They are absolutely S tier. Rushing Water is insane. If you're doing a melee or unarmed build and you've never tried this before, definitely try it, because you just start attacking like crazy. Speaking of something else you could do, you could stack Slasher on there, which is plus 25 damage resist and plus 25% more damage. This is just Med-X plus Psycho rolled into one. This has the same addiction rate as Psycho at 20%, so that's not too bad. And this one's also S tier. This one's just better than these two. And there's no real reason to not stack these, because if you're in a fight, you're probably going to be using both these anyway, especially if you're taking like a melee build or something. Up next, we got Steady. Steady's kind of a weird one. This makes it so your weapon spread is reduced. There is a very high chance that you get addicted to Steady, though. It has an 80% addiction rate, and I rarely find this to be very useful at all. Maybe if you find a really good weapon that has high requirements that your character just can't wield, it could be useful. But a lot of the time, I just use Steady for money, so I'm going to put this one into D tier. Then we have Stimpaks. Stimpaks are going to go right up to S tier. They don't weigh anything, and they heal you, which is awesome. They heal you over time if you're playing on hardcore, or they heal you instantly. They can also heal your broken limbs if you're playing on the normal difficulty. So Stimpaks, again, at the very worst, you're just going to have an excess of them, and you can just sell them for extra money, which is usually what I do with them. Super Stimpaks are similar, although they do have the downside of Super Stimpak Sickness, which reduces your strength and agility, so that's kind of a rough. But if you do need to heal quickly, this is a decent option, so I'm also going to put this one up into S tier. I'm putting these slightly above the auto-inject ones, just because you get more control over these ones, and these ones do weigh a little bit, but honestly, they're pretty comparable, and they're just kind of upgrades to it if you get a lot of them. Then we have Turbo, which Turbo is probably tied with being the most craziest chem in this game, and it's also going to go right up to S tier, because what Turbo does is slow everything but you, for 3 seconds. And you can do a lot of damage in 3 seconds. You can also run away quite a far ways in 3 seconds. And you can definitely turn the tide of battle really, really fast within those 3 seconds. You can also stack these, which increases the overall duration of it. The only downside to this is that it does have a 20% addiction rate, and Turbo is not super common to find. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to get, but when you do get it, it's very, very useful. Then we have Ultra Jet, which Ultra Jet is even better than, what was this one? Rocket, I think. So Ultra Jet actually has the same addiction rate as regular Jet, but this one is twice as strong as regular Jet. This gives you plus 40 action points for 240 seconds. That's pretty good, especially for an action point build, and you can stack it on top of everything else that's giving you bonus action points too. So this one is really good as well. I'd say it's A tier. You don't always need to have a bunch of extra action points, but it does help with certain weapons, and plus 40 can make it so a lot of weapons get an extra hit, if not an extra 2 or 3 hits in. And then our very last chem is the Weapon Binding Ritual. This is also found in Honest Hearts, and this also restores your limbs, which is very useful, as well as this does give you plus 10 more melee weapons and unarmed stats for another 2 minutes. But it does actually take away a slight amount of health. It's minus 2 HP for 2 seconds, so you don't lose a whole lot of health from this. It is really good for a melee build. It is really good for an unarmed build. If you're not running either of those, but you're playing on the hardcore difficulty, it is still useful because you can restore your limbs with it. That's great. I'm going to say that this one's A tier. I think it's really good. And that's where I'd put all of the chems in Fallout New Vegas. Tell me your thoughts on the chems down in the comments below and where you would put them. Also tell me if you'd like to see this done with some of the other consumables like the drinks and also like the food. I think food and water technically fall into the same category. The drinks might just be all of the booze. Oh wait, no, I'm looking at them now. That includes water and stuff too. So if you want to see that, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye, everybody!